Hi, I'm James Fenson from Moore & Delisle, and today's training session is on keyboard and mouse shortcuts and tips. So we're just taking through some of those. Okay, so in this session we're going to look at some keyboard and mouse shortcuts. We'll look at the Alt tab, we'll look at using Control and Shift keys with your navigational arrows. We'll look at the cut, copy and paste, we'll look at Control F for find, we'll look at the Control click on your mouse, double click and triple click. We'll also look at Smart History on your web browsers, and that Windows button that you've often wondered about on your keyboard. And we'll also look at Control plus and minus keys. So we'll just start off sitting here on my Microsoft Word document, but if I hold down my Alt button and touch the tab, you'll see it pops up with all the applications I've got running. So the next one it's moved to is a Microsoft Excel page. So I'll let go of my Alt key and I'm now on my Microsoft Excel. So the Alt tab is a real fast way of quickly toggling between applications. So I was previously on Word. If I go Alt tab again, I'll quickly flash back to Word. Alt tab again flashes back to Microsoft Excel. Now if I hold down the Alt and keep clicking tab, you'll see it moves through all the applications I have, but I find it's a very fast way of going backwards and forwards between applications. So that's the Alt tab key. So the next thing, I'll go back to my Word. We'll look at the Control and Shift keys. So as we know, if we use our arrows, we navigate around the page up and down. But what everyone doesn't appreciate sometimes is the fact that if you hold down the Control key whilst you're using your arrows, it jumps from word to word, or in fact it jumps from text block to text block. As you see, if I use my up and down, it's jumping paragraphs up and down. And if I go left and right, it jumps words left and right. Now my Shift key, most of us are familiar with, basically highlights selections. So if I left and right, it will select items, but if I hold down both the Control and Shift key, you'll see it's selecting whole words left and right, or if I go up and down, it'll select whole paragraphs up and down. So this can be a fast way of choosing and selecting items. An example could be, let's say across here I'm sitting just before the word please with my cursor, but let's say I want to change that word information. If I hold down the Control key, a few arrows will get me to the word information. I now hold down Control and Shift and use my arrow key, and it has selected that whole word. So I can quickly change that to inform if I wanted to. Now I can do the same thing using my mouse, obviously. Now I'm just moving around with my mouse. Obviously if I touch anywhere with my mouse, I can change my selection to a particular word. Likewise, I could, if I click twice or once on the word inform, it moves me to that word, to a particular place, but if I click twice, it selects the whole word. So that's doing the same as when I was using my arrow Shift Control. It was selecting a word. It does the same by double clicking using my mouse. Double click and I can select that word. As you see, then triple click will select a whole paragraph, which is very similar to using the Control, Shift and up and down keys. Now what I'll do is I'll just highlight some copies and paste. You'll probably all be familiar with this. You can use your right click and do copy and paste. You'll see those functions up in here, cut, copy and paste. Or you can use the keyboard. So I'm going to change that word education. I've just gone Control, Shift and arrow to highlight that word. I'm going to go Control X to cut it. And I'm going to paste, I'm going to type in small. And now if I go Control V, it'll paste the word education. So that's just an example how when I cut it, it keeps it in memory, and when I hit Control V, it pastes it. So Control X was cut and Control V was paste. Now Control C is copy, so if I take the word understand and go Control C, copy that, then basically I can click anywhere and paste that word, understand, 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 understand. Every time I hit Control V, it pastes that word. So it just basically remembers it in the computer's memory. And it'll remember it for some time until it's basically replaced. Now I'll flick through to another application. I'll go to Excel and we'll just highlight the same things again. So once again with my arrows in Excel, I can move around, so I can arrow up and down. But if I hold down the control key and use my arrows, then I'll jump from text block to text block. So you can see it jumps to this, basically skips all the spaces and moves to the next available point. If I'm here and I hold down control and go left, it'll jump all the way across to the first available word, which was that list outstanding receipts. Now this is a very fast way of doing things. I'm going to just quickly type a formula. I'm going to go equals open bracket. Now if I use my arrows, I could select the items I want to sum. Let's say I want to sum this whole row here. But if I go control shift, well, if I hold down shift, obviously it's going to enable me to select a number of items. But if I hold down the control and push my down arrow, it's going to select all the items in that particular row. Now in this case I can see down the bottom that it's already got a total there. Now I don't want to sum the total as well, so I've taken my finger off control, which is the jumping from text block to text block. I can still select items, so now if I arrow, it's going to still select the items, but I just want to select one less than the total, or not include the total. I'm going to put in my close bracket, hit enter, and you can see there it's calculated the sum of all the items in this particular row except for the total. This is another quick Excel function. If I double click on that item, you'll see both it's showing me what is the formula on that cell, but also it draws a picture highlighting the items included in that formula, which is a nice, fast, easy way to just double check that you've included everything in there. Now, I'm going to use the Control F key now to highlight some find functions. So in Excel, if I go Control F, I can search and replace or find something. So I want to find the word 711, 7-11. And I'll go find next, and you can see here it's found the first 7-11. Find next again, and it's found another example of it. So this is a quick and fast way of finding things within your particular application. If I was to jump back to Word and do the same thing, Control F, you'll see this time it pops up with something on this side. The word child was typed in, but if I change that to school, it's found any examples of school it could within the document. So once again, Control F, if you just remember that, it doesn't really matter where you are, it's a nice and fast way of finding things. If I go into a web page now, I can use the same keys. I could do the highlight, select, copies and paste, but in this case I'm going to go Control F, and down here it's popped up with something to look at. I'll just move that. So I'm going to once again search for that 7-11. I'm going to click highlight all, and you can see it's found any examples of 7-11 within that web page. And I can use these up and down arrows to basically move between them, so you'll see the colors changing as to which one I'm currently sitting on. So once again, I'm using the same function, Control F, but quickly finding information within a particular web page. So that's really good. Those are some really good ones to utilize. I'll try and remember. Another one I'm just going to quickly show you is Smart History. Now we all know that we can click the old back arrow on a web page and it'll go back to the previous page we're on, but not everyone's familiar with the fact that you can click and hold and it'll show you a sort of history of all the pages that you've looked at, which is really handy if it's not the last page you want to go back to, perhaps 3 pages prior to that. And when we're looking at running through a whole lot of our Xero training, you'll see that that's a really fast and handy tool there. But it enables you to just jump back to some previous pages. Well, in that case it was logged out, but you get the idea there. Another thing we're going to have a look at is our Windows button. Now, very similar to this little Windows picture, if you've got a key on your keyboard with that same picture on it, that's your Windows button, and that has a lot of handy features, and I'll just tell you some of my favorite ones. If you hold down that Windows button and hit the tab button at the same time, very similar to going Alt-Tab, it brings up a list of all the applications you've got running, but each time I hit Tab it will basically show me a picture of them so I can see it in a much more user-friendly way as to what I've got available. So I'm going to now flick to Excel. So that's that Windows button and the Tab key. Now another one that I love using is the Windows and M keys together. So if you hold down the Windows button and hit M, it basically minimizes everything at once. So this is a very fast way of basically getting you to your home page, I suppose, or to your desktop. A couple of other ones I like using is the arrow keys, so the window and the arrow keys. So let's bring up my Excel here. Let's say I want to have a look at Excel and Internet Explorer on the same screen at the same time. Well, if I hold down my Windows key and use the right arrow, what it will do is it will actually minimize my window to the right hand side of my screen. So if I hold down my Windows key and use my right arrow, you'll see it's minimized it to the right hand side. If I do it to the left, it'll minimize it to the left hand side. So if I want to get two screens running at once, I'm going to now click on my browser and hold down the Windows key and go right. You'll see it's minimized, left, it's minimized that to the left, and I've got both screens quite easily on the same page at the same time. So it's a very fast way of doing it. I'm going to bring up that bank rec. So if we go to bank rec summary. So now I've got two bank recs, one here in Excel and one here in Word. But as you can see, not Word, in Explorer. As you can see, my web page one, it's a bit hard to see everything at once. So another really handy feature is the control plus and minus, which is effectively in any web browser will be a minimize maximize. It works in fact most Windows applications except Excel. But on my web page, if I hold down the control and use my minus key, you'll see it's actually minimizing the screen or reducing the zoom on that screen so I can see more at any one time, which is really handy when I'm trying to compare these two screens. Hold down the control and the plus and it makes it bigger. So plus and minus is basically like a zoom function to make it bigger and smaller. Once again, really handy for trying to look at two things at once. The last one I'll show you is once again with that Windows button. If I go Windows and F, very similar to what we were doing before when we were doing find, control find. Obviously in any application it's finding something within that application, but if you do Windows F or Windows Find, it will look for documents within the whole system. So if you're on a network or if you're on your standalone computer, it will search for something across that whole computer. So it's a real fast way of searching for something there. I won't run that through, it's pretty self-explanatory, but those are hopefully some quick and simple tips that you can utilize within your different applications. As I say, what I encourage you to do is to try and use them as much as possible. The more you use them, the faster you'll get at navigating across your applications. So I hope you found that useful, and tune into some of our other sessions.